Into episode 20 of the Stomp the Bus show. I'm your host, Mark Harris, along with Colton Dodgson. And we're coming after
20,
what?
20
Yeah,
episodes. How do we keep getting renewed?
I know. Yeah, we're gonna have to go back to the bargaining table with our super expensive media deal that we got.
I want more money, Mark.
Yeah, can you speak up a little bit? You're kind of being a little
Oh,
quiet.
I said I want more money,
There we
Mark.
go.
Don't
There we
pretend like
go.
you can't hear me.
Yeah, I think so. All right. Yeah, maybe we can get looped in with the Pac-12 deal whenever that gets done.
Don't make
Get a
me
little
get
cut of
the
that.
don't make me get the union involved. I was hoping we could settle this like men.
Yeah, that'd be great. Um, Speaking of, well, not great. ASU officially will not be going to a bowl game after a 28-18 loss on the Palouse to Washington State in a game that was not even that close. ASU now 3-7. Um, the weather. I know that we talked about it a bunch. The weather, it was pretty much just cold. There wasn't a bunch of rain or wind. It was just cold, but ASU really couldn't do much. Let Nakia Watson run 20 carries, 116 yards, 3 touchdowns. And Trenton Bourguet was really bad in the first half, 3 of 10 and a pick. Emory Jones came in and did fine in the second half, but didn't ever really feel like they were going to win. So just kind of what we expected, you know?
So we're running the two quarterback offense now, which is fantastic. Um,
Yeah,
Yielding very positive results.
it
But
always
yeah,
does.
I mean, I feel like this season, as far as this season goes, the focus has been off of the games, at least from my perspective, since week 3.
Since
Like
Eastern
I
Michigan.
I really haven't been invested much in what's happening on the field, right?
Right,
Because it's inconsequential. It doesn't really matter what's going on the field.
right.
All of these guys are transfers. It's not like we're watching any stud freshmen and what this is going to mean for the program, anything like that, right?
Yeah,
Um, we're kind of just keeping an eye on what each game and what happens on the field implies for what's going on off of the field, right? That's what our focus was
yeah.
with Guano for a long time. That ship has sailed. Maybe not entirely, which we'll talk to and we'll speak to in just a little bit. But in terms of his head coaching candidacy, if that ship was ever away from the dock, it is very much back at the dock, if that makes, or it has sunk altogether. If
His
that
okay,
if that ship was ever at sea, if that was ever a discussion that was going to be had, Sean
right.
Aguano being the head coach, I mean, we talked about it. Was there anybody else considering it beyond just underpaid podcasters? Who's to say?
I
That,
think people were talking
that's where
about
my analogy was going, Mark. What I'm trying to say is the ship has sunk,
right.
but there may be a lifeboat for Sean Aguano. Did I rescue the analogy?
I think so. I think
Okay.
so.
Right.
Yeah, we'll get into that here in a few minutes, but I do want to talk about just I know you don't really care about the games, and I don't care about them too much, but in your with your Sean Aguano point, and we talked about this at the time, was the Stanford game. You had to win that Stanford game because we baked in the fact that you had to face a tough UCLA team at home and go on the road to play Wazoo. If ASU were 4-6 right now instead of 3-7, it would obviously, still be not a great season and everything and whatever. And it would still be tough to make a bowl game, but you have a home game this week and then you're on the road at U of A. It's like it would be tough, but it would still be, theoretically possible. Obviously now that's no longer possible. And full disclosure, I wasn't able to watch most of the Wazoo game. I did see Jalen Conyers had a great 50-yard touchdown running catch. Um, I hope that he stays. We'll see. He's already transferred once before, so that maybe that means he'll be less likely to transfer again. I don't know.
It
Um,
sucks that every positive thing we say about a player on this team is followed by, "I hope that he stays."
I know, I know.
Because that's the state of where it's at
That's
right now. You
yeah,
have to know, like, there's literally nothing positive that you can look at because it's like, "Oh, this guy's starting to develop. That just means he's gonna be able to transfer. Oh, this guy is," the only positive is we talked about him already, but Valladay, and he's probably playing himself onto, at the very least, an invite to a training camp.
right.
Like,
But that was going to happen anyway, right?
right, right. So it's just like, what is there to be excited about?
Well,
I found myself looking at Max Preps today, looking at the class of 2023 and the commits that ASU has secured for the class of 23.
like
They're dead
6.
last. They're dead last in the Pac-12.
Yeah,
It is
in the Power
not.
5. It's yeah.
It's not going to be good.
No, no. Look. We know. Look. I mean, we like for me, like we just got to ride through this season. Maybe you beat U of A, maybe you don't. But in terms of one thing that was like, I was like, oh, this could be good looking into the future was Bourget because he had played well when given the opportunities previous to this game, and that did not happen this game. He went 3 of 10, a pick. Offense was terrible. They moved the ball in the second half with Emory Jones. But
Well, it looked like you were running the offense out there, Mark.
yeah, I mean, Bourget and I probably have the same level of arm strength. He just probably knows where to put it better than I do. But
Yeah, you got a longer wind up.
yeah, he probably has a better release than I do as
Yeah.
well. Uh, but he was someone where like, okay, if he can like catch fire through the second half of the season and just even look good in losses, then that is something that's like mildly encouraging entering into the next year because I don't think Bourget is going to have like this huge transfer market. Um, Maybe he would, I don't know, but uh, yeah, it's tough. And the next game we have coming in at the beginning of the year, it looked like a somewhat manageable win, but Oregon State is 7-3, and they're the 23rd ranked team in the college football playoff. And Oregon State is just a solid team that beats who they're supposed to beat. Their only losses this year are against USC at home, on the road at Utah, and at Washington, where they lost. And they lost to UW and USC in 3 points in both of those games. So they're just a really good team. They haven't stubbed their foot and had a dumb loss. You know, that does happen to teams in Tempe, just that's Washington. But um I mean, Oregon State runs the ball really well. ASU doesn't do a good job stopping the run. It's just probably going to be, a bloodbath. And so um, we'll see what happens, but I'm not super encouraged ASU will be able to finish off this season with a plucky win at home.
Yeah, I'm with you, Mark.
Some good analysis. But I mean,
Yeah.
it's honestly like that's where we're at with the ASU team, like I'm
Like,
not
yeah,
even.
what else do you say?
No, yeah, no, I know exactly. And now you have guys like I think Ladarius Henderson has been injured for a bit, and I mean I wouldn't see him coming back now because he's going to like one of the like the East West bowls at the end of the year that players go to. Um, I'm looking up exactly which one it is, but he's probably played his last game as a Sun Devil, and he's one of our better players. He's probably like one of the few players on this team to have like a guaranteed shot to get drafted this next year because uh, and he'll be gone. I mean, granted, he's a left guard, doesn't fundamentally change a bunch of stuff, but uh, it's just one more good player that won't 100% won't be there, or not 100%, but uh, likely won't be there. So the East West Shrine Bowl, that's what it is. So
There you go.
And Kyle Soeli also accepted an invite. I know that he's been injured for a little bit. We'll see if he comes back. I could see someone like him wanting to play for the U of A game, but we'll see when it comes to that. So it's we're in death march territory right now. Like this is just a slog to get to the end of the year, you know?
Yes, and it's just a slog to get to. We're kind of in this weird like purgatory where it's like there's nothing like what is next. We don't even know what's coming next. And that I mean, obviously the rumors are starting to ramp up and everything, and it looks promising. It looks like the hire that's rumored to be picking up steam could be a pretty effective one, and with local ties, and maybe that is some. I mean, we've talked about reemphasizing local recruiting quite a bit, so maybe that's something that
Right.
starts to pick up steam. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, based on what we've seen so far, it looks like things are starting to very, very what's the word I'm looking subtly. There we go. Very subtly trend in the right direction.
Yeah. So uh it's you know, we have this Oregon State game. Hopefully ASU looks competitive and doesn't totally just no show. That would be really disappointing. But what Colton was alluding to is a lot of these rumors about Oregon offensive coordinator Kenny Dillingham potentially getting the head football coaching job. And my thing is like, I, I who knows what's going to happen, but I'm just glad that there just seems to be a lot of rumors about it and rumors coming from like legit sources, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Seeing this start to pick up steam. It's one of those things where you're looking at all of the details and kind of reading about Kenny Dillingham's background and all of these things, and you're like, this makes too much sense, so it's probably not going to happen. That's usually how these things work. The things that seem uh, seamless, right? The
Yeah.
things that make the most sense rarely seem to happen. And that rare instance, do things go that way? Because you realize that in sports, whoever is making the decisions is desperate to prove that they're the smartest person in the room, and they want to be like, "Oh, the fans,
Especially at ASU. Oh my
yeah,
God.
the fans know nothing. We have to go off the grid here to show
Yeah.
them that we know more than them." But it's like sometimes the layup higher is the right hire, and this
Well,
looks like the layup higher. Like
right. And here's the
there's
other thing: if ASU hires Kenny Dillingham, and it just what for whatever reason it just doesn't work out, it just turns out that he's just not a good coach. I would be okay with that because at least you were making a hire that made sense.
yeah,
And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. Like when Nebraska hired Scott Frost, it didn't work out. But like, what were they supposed to do when he came had that season? The undefeated UCF year? Like, are they just
mhm.
supposed to be like, oh, let's not hire him because he may be bad? It's like, no, like hire him and see where the chips fall, you know?
Yeah, you have to take those swings on the potential and the potential based on the fit with your program. And this
Yes.
fit seems like a seamless fit, right? I mean,
He's literally he's an alum. He's been a GA here.
Apparel grad,
Yeah.
one of the prominent high school football programs in the state of Arizona.
He has
Uh,
like and he's been coaching since he and then we talked about this before, but he's been coaching since he was like 18. And like that makes up for the fact that he's like I think he's like 33. Like that makes up for the fact that he doesn't have as much experience as or he doesn't have the age experience that people think, but he
but
has the
33
actual
is like
experience.
33 is like a prime age. Like that is a guy that you can build a program around.
Yes. Yes.
And that's
And
like
people if they hired Dillingham, people would be so happy. And guess what that means? More NIL money flowing in.
yeah,
More attention from recruits because this dude has been recruiting Arizona at other places. He's been recruiting here when he was at Memphis, when he was at Auburn, FSU, Oregon. Like,
yeah. And the thing is too, you in this new era of transfer portals and all of
yes,
these other things, you see guys who commit to play for a coach flip at a moment's notice, like
yes, yes,
constantly. I'm not saying it's happening this year, but I mean, even if you go, I'm trying to pull it up real quick, but even if you go to like the 22 247 sports like class of 2024, and look at Arizona recruits who are committed to Oregon.
Yeah.
Offensive players committed to go play at Oregon, and then they see Oregon's offensive coordinator is now coaching at ASU in their backyard. It just makes things more interesting. I'm not saying he's going to come in and immediately start flipping all of these prominent recruits.
No. Yeah, you're
But
right.
ASU is at least something they maybe think about twice instead of just laughing off like they're doing right now.
Or, and a lot of time, Ralph Amsden, who covers ASU, he basically said a lot of ASU's recruiting process in terms of Arizona kids is just getting in on them way late after a bunch of other schools have. And so, like, if you're a kid who's getting recruited by a bunch of other Power Five schools, and then ASU comes in at the end once, like, oh, hey, you should come here just because we're nearby. It's like, no, you can't just we're near. Oh, we're a 15-minute drive from your mom's house. Like, no, dude. Like, that's what they like. They just think they're so much better. Like ASU can't operate with this mindset of like, oh, we're just above everyone else and yada yada. Like, clearly that's not the case.
Right. I mean, even if you just look at the top 23 players or the top players in the 2023 class, I mean, Dante Moore, Oregon.
Yeah, I feel like he's probably not coming in.
No, I mean, but
Yeah.
I'm just looking at these guys who are like committed to play offense at Oregon. And like I said, I'm not saying he's going to come in and flip all of these guys, but I'm saying like down the line as he starts to get established, I mean, he's recruiting players to come play for him at Oregon. And obviously this example is a little more applicable for Arizona players. But right here, this is what I was trying to, well, these are both defensive guys, never mind. But I mean, even the class of 2023, Oregon is all over the place. So it's something, and I know that Oregon is obviously it's a Pac-12 school. It's got prominent roots in Arizona. I mean, recruiting Arizona, things like that. So I guess what I'm trying to say is this would be a pretty seamless fit, and especially in this era of the transfer portal. I mean, coming in and just kind of flipping your approach to I was recruiting you at Oregon. This is what I'm going to do here. Come be a part of building this with me. That sort of thing.
Right.
Could prove to be effective. But I mean,
Well, and the other thing with Dillingham is like it's not like he's just only a good recruiter in Arizona. Like this dude is he's come up in the 2010s of college football where recruiting is become so important. And you look at
right.
Georgia as the top example of that. He understands how the game, like how to recruit, unlike our last staff or most of our last staff anyway. And that's important. Like he can relate to kids. He's also lived in a lot of different areas of the country since leaving ASU. So building recruiting connections there, I guess mostly in the South. And the other thing with Dillingham is that because he's an offensive guy, I think there might be guys that transfer in, because of that, because they know, oh, this guy will be able to get me open or whatever. To like kind of not similar to what happened at USC last year, but like a poor man's version of that, you know. And he might be able to keep a lot of the offensive guys on our team because they'll be like, oh, like I'm going to be in this offense next year, Like that's kind of what happened at UW, the school that I grew up rooting for. They had a terrible season last year, just like we're having now. They hired Kalen DeBoer. Granted, Kalen DeBoer had a lot more head coaching experience than Kenny Dillingham, so it's not a perfect comparison. But he comes in, and guess what? Like all the great wide receivers, Washington as Rome Odunze, Jalen McMillan, you saw him in the Oregon game. They could have easily left, but they stayed because guess what? This guy has a great offense. I'll be able to get open, and that'll help me get to the NFL better than being the third wide receiver on Alabama or whatever. So I think that's a possible outcome of Dillingham being here when it comes to guys like Jalen Conyer, Elijah Badger, all these guys that have other options. So granted, if we get slammed by the NCAA, that could totally throw this out the window, and that's still a variable. But it's just the thing with Dillingham that just makes him like on paper, it's just such an obvious and easy move to make to hiring him. He has the Arizona high school connections. He's an offensive guy. He's young. Like that's what we've been talking about, he's basically the opposite of Herm Edwards, you know.
Right, right. It makes too much sense. And the thing that um since we're talking about recruiting in state and all of the implications that come with that, his willingness to possibly keep Iguano on staff or something that
Yep.
he's going to try to do,
Yep.
based on that tweet from Chili. Is that what he goes by, Chili?
Just Chili. Yeah. So what we're talking about right now is Just Chili, who is a he mainly covers high school football in Arizona. Works for Devil's Digest. Um, he tweeted on Monday, I believe. He tweeted, "quote I'm hearing if Oregon OC Kenny Dillingham is the next head coach at ASU, he'll do everything possible to keep current interim head coach Sean Aguano on his staff." That would be huge. I feel like reading this tweet, it feels like it's Dillingham reaching out to Chili, um, because how else? Like, how would an inside ASU source be like, "Oh, Dillingham would definitely keep Iguano"? Like, that would have to be Dillingham's decision, right?
Right.
So who knows what that means? But
Yeah,
I guess
we
to me that means like Iguano want. I mean, well, Iguano does want the job, but Dillingham wants the job. Like, and if
yeah,
you're
well,
ASU right now, we need people who want to be here, and actually like think of ASU more than just like being a mid-tier Power Five program. Like if you're Herm Edwards, what's the difference in your mind between ASU and Minnesota or North Carolina State or Mississippi State or whatever it is? You're just run of the mill 7-5 Power Five school like ASU has been. Um, but if you're Kenny Dillingham, you're like, okay, like I went here. So he might just, want him to be good just because he, went to school here. He's from here and has a lot of connections to the Scottsdale booster people. I read that somewhere. So it's like, it's just so, you mentioned it earlier, it's just so obvious. And that's what scares the living poop out of me because
wow.
I just can't see. I just feel like Michael Crow, whoever's making the decision, Michael Crow, Ray Anderson. I know they did hire a whatever, like one of the coaches' search firms, consulting firms, whatever. So that'll have input on it. But whoever makes the decision, whether it's Michael Crow, it's probably won't be Ray Anderson making the final decision. So I'm just going to say Crow. If he just goes big brain again, and it's going to be tough. It's just going to be really tough for me. So, and maybe he'll hire someone else that's better than Dillingham. I mean, it's not like Dillingham's the only choice here, but
Yeah, I mean, I hope he's the only choice. I mean, I don't know who else would make more sense. We've already talked about it ad nauseum, but it seems like going back to somebody who knows what this, and like you said, somebody who wants to be here. I mean, it's his alma mater. It was his first college coaching job, if I'm not mistaken, right under Todd
yeah,
Graham.
yeah,
So to get back to where he started and like be the guy, that's got to be an opportunity. Obviously, that's an opportunity that nobody else has. Like that's
right,
an opportunity unique to him.
right.
Um, so it just, and I don't know why anybody making this decision would pass that sort of connection up. That's a connection that is so valuable that it will sort of reflect on the job and make him, it might lead to a pride in this job and a pride in what he's going to try to accomplish that
Hmm.
you might not find in another candidate.
Yeah. Uh, and I mean, having Iguano on staff, I mean, that would be obviously you probably wouldn't be able to keep the Dillingham Iguano combo, together forever. But even if it's like 2 years of Dillingham as coach and Iguano as OC, that would be just killer in terms of high school recruiting. I mean,
Right.
absolutely killer. You see some of these coaches like Jason Mons, who's the head coach of Saguaro. I see him on Twitter, like quote tweeting tweets about Dillingham and Iguano being like, oh, like with like thumbs up emojis and stuff like that. It's like, Michael Crow, look at that tweet and just understand why that's important. And uh,
Yeah.
um,
I mean, Arizona too is like it's becoming a pretty prominent And I mean, it always has been, but like one of those, I would
Yeah.
say like a top 10 pipeline of high school talent, right? Like,
Okay, maybe it's not right now, but it will be. Just if not just because of all the people that have moved to Arizona. Like,
right, right. I mean, exactly. And the number one recruit in the country is next season. Not obviously not making any implication there, but just
Dylan
alluding to,
Raiola, the guy from
yeah,
Chandler. Yeah.
yeah, just alluding to
Right, right.
the caliber of players that come out of Arizona. It's something that you need to
Yes.
redirect your focus on. And who better to do it than that duo if
Yeah.
Iguano stays? And I don't know why he wouldn't.
Right. Well, especially if he's getting elevated to OC as well. Because even just from selfishly, as if you're a Guano, if you get the OC job, you have even one good year, then you could be a Power Five head coach, you know. So I don't think Iguano is going to be like, oh, I would only be a Power Five head coach at Arizona State. Like, I feel like that's not how people work for the most part. But yeah, I mean, it would be. I mean, look, it may not work. Like Dillingham, he's never been a head coach before, so that's obviously an issue. But that's not hiring someone because they haven't been a head coach before is just a bad practice. Like, guess who else hasn't been a head coach before? Dan Lanning at Oregon. You know, Lincoln Riley wasn't a head coach before he got elevated at Oklahoma. Like,
Yeah, I think serving as a prominent coordinator, that's
yes,
kind of the what's the word I'm looking for? The progression. That's kind
right,
of the progression, right? Serving as a prominent coordinator, it's kind of like, okay, your next shot is to be the guy. That's where you go from here. And I mean, you're right. Like, you're not going to hire somebody because they don't have experience. Well, how are they going to get that experience? Like,
right.
it
And we
doesn't
are
make
not in a
sense.
position to
At a
be.
certain point, you have to take a chance on someone.
Yes. And we are not in a position to be like turning people down either,
Right.
you know. So I hope that either Dillingham gets hired and keeps Iguano, or hey, you know what, Michael Crow, maybe you make a hire that's just better than that. And I'd be fine with that too. Like, ultimately, I just want the best for ASU football. It doesn't have to be with any one specific guy, but just from where we are right now on November 17th, it just feels like a very just obvious course of action to take. And it would get the NIL money rolling in. And that is so important. No one is going to, if you hire some boring, I don't even know who it would be, Bill O'Brien. If he hires Bill freaking Bryan from Alabama, who, by the way, is having one of their worst offensive seasons in years, despite having Bryce Young. I'd like to point that out. Um, Although, granted, they don't have like a ton of first round wide receivers like usual. But anyway, if they hire a boring blank coach like Bill O'Brien or whatever,
Who can't run an offense without elite talent?
right?
That's the
And
point, right?
yeah.
Like
But anyway,
unless he's
my
got,
point
yeah.
is just
Go ahead. Go ahead.
the boring nature of someone like that is not going to get a bunch of donors pouring money into the NIL collective, you know? So that should be considered in this whole process. And you know what? Look, maybe they hire, you mentioned Jamie Chadwell. I'd be perfectly fine with that. Or I've seen the one name I've seen kind of just bandied around on social media that I could totally see happening is Bronco Mendenhall. And he was at BYU for a while and then Virginia. And they went to an Orange Bowl, and that's pretty tough to do at Virginia. But I
Did
wouldn't
you
be that
say
excited about it, but I also would not be totally against it either.
did you say meandering about?
Bandied
What
about,
is bandied about?
just like brought up.
Oh,
Yeah.
I didn't expect to come on this show and learn something.
Well,
You surprise me every day, Marcus.
yeah. Well, hey, let's wrap up this, and hopefully we are not surprised by ASU's future head coaching decision when they hire Kenny Dillingham shortly after the U of A game at the end of the year. That would be sweet.
If
And
it's
he's
not
and
him, if it's not him, I want it to be you.
that would be a very bad head coach. But Any final thoughts as we wrap up episode 20?
Not necessarily, Mark. I know this one was short and sweet, but it's always a pleasure to be here with you. Our 20th episode.
That's right.
We're building the
Made it.
foundation here. We're building a culture on this show, and that's
Right.
what we aimed to do from the beginning. We wanted to be a part of something special, me and you. That's what we both said to each other, and then I scratched your beard and said I'd come aboard.
It went down exactly like that, folks. All right. Well, we are on the Dillingham train. Hopefully, the train arrives in Tempe in about 2 weeks. All right. That's the end of episode 20. Goodbye and go Devils.